Sarah was a 28-year-old woman living in the heart of the city, her life a blend of bustling workdays and tranquil evenings spent in her cozy apartment. An independent woman with a promising career in marketing, she had a tight-knit group of friends and a cat named Whiskers who kept her company. Despite her seemingly fulfilling life, she often felt a gnawing loneliness. In an effort to find companionship, she turned to Tinder, hoping to meet someone who could share her dreams and adventures. One evening, Sarah matched with Alex, a man in his early 30s with a magnetic smile and a profile that radiated charm. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, filled with shared interests in literature, travel, and a passion for cooking. He seemed genuine and thoughtful, often sending her good morning texts and checking in on her day. After 2 weeks of engaging conversations, they decided to meet for a coffee date at a quaint cafe downtown. Their first date was everything Sarah had hoped for. Alex was just as charming in person as he was online. They talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories about their lives. Sarah felt a connection she hadn't experienced in years. As the date ended, Alex walked her to her car, giving her a warm hug and promising to call her soon. Sarah drove home with a fluttering heart, excited about the possibilities of this new relationship. However, the thrill of new romance soon gave way to an undercurrent of unease. The day after their date, Sarah noticed Alex standing across the street from her apartment as she left for work. He waved and smiled, explaining later via text that he was in the neighborhood and thought he'd say hi. She dismissed it as a coincidence, but a seed of discomfort was planted. Over the next few days, Alex's behavior grew increasingly intrusive. He seemed to know details about her life that she hadn't shared, like her favorite coffee shop and the routes she took for her evening runs. One night, she returned home to find a bouquet of her favorite flowers on her doorstep with a note that read, "Thinking of you, always, Alex." Sarah's heart raced, torn between flattery and fear. How did he know where she lived? As the days passed, Alex's presence became more pervasive. He appeared at her gym, at the supermarket, and even at her workplace, always with the same explanation: he was just passing by. Sarah's friends began to notice her anxiety, urging her to set boundaries. She tried to talk to Alex about it, but he brushed off her concerns with a charming laugh and reassurances that he was just eager to see her. Then the messages began to change. They shifted from sweet and caring to cryptic and unsettling. "I love watching you sleep," one message read. Sarah's blood ran cold. How did he know how she looked when she slept? She had never mentioned her sleeping habits to him. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface now boiled over. She installed security cameras around her apartment and changed her locks, hoping to regain some semblance of control. One night, Sarah awoke to the sound of a creaking floorboard. Her heart pounded as she reached for her phone, only to find it missing from her bedside table. Panic surged through her veins. She glanced around the darkened room, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. There, in the corner, stood Alex, his face illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the window. He smiled, a sinister glint in his eyes. "How did you get in here?" she demanded, her voice trembling. He stepped closer, the shadows casting eerie patterns on his face. "I have my ways," he replied softly. "You should be more careful about who you let into your life, Sarah." Before she could scream, he was gone, leaving behind a note on her pillow. "I'll always be with you." Sarah's hand shook as she called the police, but without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. The sense of violation and helplessness was overwhelming. The following days were a blur of anxiety and paranoia. Sarah barely slept, jumping at every sound. She felt Alex's eyes on her everywhere she went, her life a series of tense, fear-ridden moments. One evening, she found her cat Whiskers hiding under the bed, trembling. A chilling thought crossed her mind. Had Alex been in her apartment again? As her fear mounted, so did Alex's boldness. He began sending her photos of herself taken from inside her apartment, each one more invasive than the last. Sarah's sanctuary had become a prison, her every move monitored by a man whose obsession knew no bounds. She confided in her friends, but their support could only do so much. The police were involved, but without concrete evidence, their hands were tied. Then came the night that would forever change Sarah's life. She was sitting on her couch, trying to lose herself in a book, when she heard a knock at the door. Peering through the peephole, she saw no one. As she turned away, the door burst open and Alex stormed in, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "Why are you doing this to me?" he shouted, advancing towards her. "You belong to me, Sarah. We were meant to be together." Sarah's scream echoed through the apartment as she tried to run, but Alex grabbed her, his grip like iron. He dragged her to the floor, his eyes wild with obsession. "You can't escape me," he hissed. "You're mine." In the struggle, Sarah managed to grab a nearby lamp, smashing it over Alex's head. He fell back, dazed, giving her a precious few seconds to escape. She ran out of the apartment, screaming for help, her voice hoarse with terror. Neighbors emerged, and the police were called. Alex was arrested, but the damage was done. For days, Sarah stayed with friends, too afraid to return to her apartment. When she finally did, it felt like walking into a haunted house. The walls seemed to close in on her, every shadow a potential threat. She changed her locks again, installed more security measures, but the fear lingered. Then came the trial, where Sarah had to face Alex once more. His demeanor in court was calm, almost mocking, as he denied the charges and claimed it was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence was overwhelming. The photos, the messages, the testimony of her friends and neighbors. He was found guilty of stalking and breaking and entering, sentenced to several years in prison. But even as he was led away in handcuffs, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on her. The relief was tempered by the realization that her life had been irrevocably changed. She moved to a new apartment, adopted another cat for company, and tried to rebuild her sense of security. But the scars ran deep, both physically and emotionally. Sarah's story became a cautionary tale among her friends and co-workers, a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking in the world of online dating. She joined support groups, sharing her experience and helping others who had faced similar horrors. Slowly, she began to reclaim her life, but the trauma lingered, a shadow that followed her wherever she went. Years passed, and Sarah found a new normal. She met someone kind and understanding who supported her through her healing process. But every now and then, she would wake in the middle of the night, her heart pounding, convinced she heard the creak of a floorboard or the whisper of a note being left on her pillow. The fear never fully disappeared, a lingering reminder of the darkness that had once invaded her life. In the end, Sarah learned to live with her scars, both visible and hidden. She became an advocate for others, using her story to raise awareness about the dangers of online dating and the importance of trusting one's instincts. Her life moved forward, but the memories of Alex and the terror he inflicted were never far behind.